The drama of a new shipping season has begun again on Lake Superior. Soon the crowds will line the piers at Duluth's Canal Park for the spectacle of the steel steamers. For the mariner, spring brings the promise of less ice and warmer sailing. For those living on the western end of Lake Superior, it's a welcome relief from winter's latest icebound grip. Opening the icy harbor and lake for commercial traffic is one of the primary missions for the United States Coast Guard cutter Sundew. Stationed year-round at Duluth, the Sundew is the most visible presence for the Coast Guard on Lake Superior. For the crew of the Sundew, the annual ritual of icebreaking begins in earnest by mid-March. The lookout on the flying bridge makes a visual confirmation of a shape shimmering above the brilliant white of the spring ice. 6 hours behind schedule, the gray silhouette of a gigantic freighter finally looms on the horizon. It's her first trip up to the head of Lake Superior this season, and the first chance for some of the Sundew's crew to see up close one of the legendary 1,000-footers that inhabit the upper Great Lakes. Leaving behind the open waters of Lake Superior, the ship enters the ice pack, threading the path made the previous day by an outbound steamer. As they draw closer, we pull off into the ice to watch them pass. Moving in ballast at nearly 12 knots, the 35,000-ton Ogle Bay Norton pushes a wall of water and ice before her as she rushes past. As the Duluth Aerial Lift Bridge prepares to lift in the distance, we slowly back out into the ice track to resume the job at hand.
Well, icebreaking to me it was impressive that a ship of this size can go through as much ice as we do. It's a lot of raw power and steel. There's not a whole lot of finesse in ice breaking. It's basically we do a lot of backing and ramming, which is backing up probably 2 or 3 ship lengths and putting the throttle down full and just going as far as we can to initially break out the harbor.
Ice breaking is really cool. It's just go out there and it's all frozen up. We're the only vessels that can really get through there besides the Mackinac, and those ships call us. It's our job. We got to go out there and do it.
Harbor ice tends to be of 2 types. You have plate ice that forms over the winter. It'll be a uniform thickness, usually up to 2 feet in the harbor here, often up to 3 or 4 feet though. And that ice is difficult to break just because it's been frozen up over the winter slowly. The temperatures in Duluth and this end of the lake get very cold, so the ice is dense and very hard. Now we can effectively break through up to 2.5 foot of that ice and marginally can get through more.
It's an incredible experience driving a ship through ice. And, I never could imagine what it would be like, but it's really incredible. It's fun.
There's ice almost, I don't think it was like 2-3 feet, and we were going through it, and as the breaker hits the ice, you can just hear the shock wave just go out. It was kind of neat.
The power required for the ice breaking is supplied from the ship's engine room. The 53-year-old vessel is powered by twin diesel-electric engines.
For engineering, everything's usually running. 2 generators, 2 main engines, and the bow thruster. It can be very loud and shaky. These engines run at 900 RPMs, which is about 150 more than any other 180. And the reason for that is just the extra power that we need. It's got this is the largest. It's got the largest shaft of any 180. It's got the most power. We run a lot harder than any other 180 runs because of the ice.
Breaking ice outside of the main harbor and the unprotected waters of Lake Superior can often be more difficult and frustrating.
In the lake, you see different types of ice. You'll have the same plate form, but the weather, winds and waves and storms will break that up, and they'll stack it up into windrows or pressure ridges, as we call them. And I've seen those up to sticking up 7 or 8 foot above the water and 20 or 25 foot below the water. And those are very difficult to get through. It can take hours. Sometimes you get stuck in them and you can't get yourself out, and you need another icebreaker to come help.
The need for the Sundew in the maritime community in and around the Duluth and Lake Superior operations area is unquestioned. The icebreaking mission of the Sundew supports the vital waterborne commerce, particularly in its home port of Duluth.
When the ice comes in heavy, ships are stuck and the going's difficult, and the crews are tired on the commercial ships, and there's a lot of strain, and the crews on the Coast Guard ships get tired. They're working very long hours. And what it requires is an extraordinary amount of cooperation, and we've actually got it. The lake carriers, the U.S. Coast Guard, and the Canadian Coast Guard are a wonderful example, I think, of business and international governmental cooperation.
That's one of the missions where I get the greatest satisfaction out of, where I can actually see the results of our efforts. When you come up on a 1,000-foot ship, or any other ship for that matter, that they can't move, and we work on them for a couple hours and finally get them moving again, you feel like you've really accomplished something.
I know firsthand, especially from working with different vendors and things like that in the area, you just call up and say, hey, I'm on the Sundew, and people are more than happy to help you, more than willing. So we have real good ties with the community.
Almost everybody knows of the Sundew. You tell them that you're on board the Sundew, it's kind of a little like, wow, really? That's cool. I see that, but once in a while I'd like to see it. And then we'll say, oh, come on down. And every once in a while we'll have a load of people go out. We broke ice for one day, brought a whole bunch of people out. They enjoyed it. It was really neat. You see the kids laughing and running and playing. It was kind of cool.
The Port of Duluth is the 4th home port for the Sundew since the vessel was commissioned in 1944. She has been stationed in Duluth since 1980. The crew of the Sundew come from all over the country and find their home port to be a friendly and interesting place to live.
It's a good relationship. A lot of people I done talked to, or older people, they like the Sundew. They know about the Sundew. They've had tours on the Sundew.
It's a pretty busy port. It's the farthest, the westernmost port on the lakes. So you do get a lot of traffic. Most of them from the lakes here and from Canada.
You talk to some people that watch the ships along the breakwalls there. Oh yeah, the Coast Guard. That's a pretty neat job. If you say you're on the Sundew, they'll say, oh, I know what you do. You do the ice breaking in the spring.
You've got the industrial center down by the ore docks and the coal docks, both in Duluth and Superior sides of the harbor. Then you also have places like Park Point and Wisconsin Point, which are recreational areas and just beautiful. And we also mark the upper river, where there's a lot of recreational fishing and boating up in that area.
The role of the Sundew is a well-respected one. The vessel and its crew enjoy a special relationship with the citizens of Duluth Superior.
And the people really appreciate and respect the Coast Guard here for what we do. It's very tangible to them. The value the Coast Guard provides in this community is obvious. The town's built on a steep hillside, and a great number of just the general population overlook the harbor and this end of the lake on a daily basis. And they see what we do. They see us out there working buoys, and they see us out there breaking ice. And it's a very big part of this cold community, what this icebreaker does for them. I know that late in the winter, when the ice starts to come in, you know, the news starts to cover it and the papers cover it, and people are looking at the last saltwater vessel going out with loads of grain, and they're looking at us helping the last vessels get out, and they know when the harbor's closed. And then in the spring, in early March, we're the first sign of spring, and people look forward to it because it's a long, cold winter. And when we get out there starting to break ice, you know, we're not at the end of the winter, but we're at the beginning of the end of the winter, and people look forward to it. And they watch us do it. You know, there's a lot of drama to ice breaking. You know, they'll see us go out and work for 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 straight hours and barely move because the ice will be that heavy. And they'll wake up some mornings and see ships stuck in the ice outside of Duluth entrance, and we'll see us go out and free them up and get them moving again. So they really appreciate what we do, and they're very warm towards us. And as a result, it's a wonderful place to be stationed.
Lake Superior, beloved and feared, is the major operations area for the Sundew beyond the sheltered waters of the Twin Ports. To those who work aboard the Sundew, there's never a lack of words to describe their wonder and respect for this great lake.
I like Lake Superior a lot. I had never been on the Great Lakes in my whole career, so it was all new to me. I have a lot more respect for it now than I did before.
Lake Superior is very challenging for a ship. It's very deep, it's rough, it's cold. The shorelines are mainly rocky, so it's unforgiving. And it's very beautiful. So it's a wonderful place to serve on a Coast Guard cutter.
It's not only beautiful, but it's rugged, and you've got some fantastic scenery. A lot of pristine forests and islands and things, and it's very enjoyable to work in.
Cold. Cold and a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Real big. I didn't expect it to be as big as it was. I knew it was a large lake, but you get out there and it's like being on an ocean.
Lake Superior is it's more of an unknown because it's a lake. It's not an ocean.
But it seems like a very interesting operation area. The scenery is fantastic in some of the places we go.
Lake Superior is probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. Majestic shorelines with the rock caverns and the timbers and the pine trees coming off those cliffs. It's just beautiful. There's probably nothing like it in the world.
It's extremely cold, and it's just beautiful. The country, especially in the UP of Michigan and Isle Royale, it's beautiful. That's about all you can say, especially in the fall. That's probably one of the prettiest places I've ever seen.
In addition to ice breaking, the real heart and soul of what the Sundew does is maintaining aids to navigation, or plain and simple, buoy tending. The Aton mission consists of 230 buoys scattered across Lake Superior, most of which are seasonal and need to be taken out during the winter ice season and put back in again in the spring.
Buoy tending is one of the greatest missions in the Coast Guard. Again, for the public, it's a very value-obvious mission. They see what we do. It benefits them directly. They like it. And for us, we get a very tangible sense of accomplishment. And when we go and put a buoy in the spring, you can look behind you in the wake and you can see a buoy that's got a fresh coat of paint and fresh numbers on it and the lights blinking. And it feels good. You know, you've done something that day that's very tangible, and a lot of jobs aren't like that. So we love buoy tending.
While not as dramatic and visible as icebreaking, the job of buoy tending is essentially the primary mission for the Sundew on Lake Superior. For the captain of the Sundew, it's a challenge in ship handling and a game of strategy in planning when and how to get the buoys in and out under the most favorable conditions.
The navigational part of buoy tending is one of the hardest things about it. We really have two things going on in buoy tending. Down on deck, you've got the men that are moving the heavy weights in a dangerous situation very carefully, often in a wet, cold, slick, or rough environment. And on the bridge, you've got the navigation team and the ship's officers trying to navigate the ship safely in the channel, but not in the middle of the channel. We have to go along the edges or over to where the rocks are to set these buoys, because that's where the buoys go. You know, innately they mark where the ships are not supposed to be, but that's where we have to take our ship. So our challenge becomes getting the ship in there safely and putting the buoy there exactly where the buoy is supposed to be without hitting the rocks or the shoals ourselves. And that's a big challenge at times, because you're dealing with a lot of adverse current and adverse wind and not quite enough water for the ship.
Navigating the Sundew into the correct position to splash a buoy takes a coordinated effort, using the skills of many people to maneuver the vessel into place. Lake Superior is a wily competitor and rarely shows the same look twice, so the crew needs to be vigilant.
We set up people that give us danger information, be it a bearing to an object on shore or a range to an object on shore, and we constantly listen for that as we're driving in, make sure we're not going beyond the danger information that we have. So it's very precise, and it has to be precise, because otherwise the other ships would go into danger.
We operate around areas and mark areas that ships aren't supposed to be, and that's the purpose of having the aids of navigation, to warn ships places not to go. And we operate and work around those areas all the time. So it can get kind of hairy, it can get kind of tense at times.
While the navigation team works the vessel into position, the Sundew's deck force readies the next buoy. A sizable crew works the deck, many at entry-level positions. During an average year, as many as 1/3 of the crew are new to the vessel, so training is a continual process on the buoy deck of the Sundew. Doing the job right and doing it safely is critical, particularly under adverse weather conditions.
It's a very potentially dangerous environment where we're swinging tons of steel and concrete around a moving deck. And as long as everybody knows what they're doing and knows how to do it, we can reduce the risk factor well below any danger, really.
The biggest thing that we worry about is where the load's going to go. That's very important, making sure there's nothing underneath it and everybody's out of the way. You just got to think ahead of what you're doing.
Depending on the location and their purpose, the aids to navigation can vary considerably in size and shape.
We have everything from small buoys that go in the rivers to big, 9 by 20 foot buoys, and it saves, it saves a lot for the Lakers and things like that are coming into our port, and it just makes life a lot easier for them, and that's our mission. That just happens to be what we do, and we're all here for that. So.
The Sundew was built in Duluth at the Marine Iron and Shipbuilding Company and launched on February 8, 1944. The Sundew was the 35th seagoing buoy tender built in Duluth during the decade of the 40s. Throughout its career, The Sundew has been well taken care of by many hard-working and dedicated crews. The present crew consider it to be in as good a shape today as it was when launched.
It's interesting to be on a boat that's this old and still in good shape, that's able to run and do its job still after all this time.
The cold, fresh water helps a lot to keep it in real good shape. For being 52 or 53 years old, it's excellent. And I think that's a lot because of the fresh, cold water.
The ship is very seaworthy. It is built as an ocean-going vessel, so the ship can probably take just about anything that the lake can dish up. That doesn't mean it's going to be very comfortable or very pleasant. So we're not ashamed to hide from weather.
The notoriety that Lake Superior has earned regarding foul weather is well justified. As members of the Coast Guard, the crew of the Sundew must be able to respond quickly and effectively to any potential maritime disaster. It's not always an easy role. In 1958, while stationed at Charlevoix, Michigan, the Sundew valiantly fought massive seas on Lake Michigan in the search and rescue of survivors from the steamer Carl D. Bradley. Only hours away from their home port, the Bradley broke in two on their final run of the season. The two men rescued by the Sundew would prove to be the only survivors from the Bradley's 35-man crew.
Search and rescue's really kind of our third mission here. It has a large impact on this crew because anytime gale or storm warnings go up on Lake Superior, we go down into a 2-hour recall. We call it Bravo 2 status. And that puts our men on they always have to be able to get back to the ship within 2 hours from any recall for a search and rescue case, which means you can't go further than an hour from the ship, and if you go an hour, you need to call the ship immediately in case there's been a recall. It makes it hard to go to church. It makes it hard to even go see a movie or to go grocery shopping. And because of the amount of storms we get through the winter on Lake Superior, we're on Bravo 2 a lot. And that has a very large impact on the crew and their families.
Despite the unpredictable nature of their job, the crew of the Sundew serve the Twin Ports with pride and determination. It's an experience they look upon with a sense of accomplishment they will carry with them throughout their careers and their lives.
I love the Sundew. Most of my career has been on these 180-foot buoy tenders that were built in the 40s. Now these are all wartime era construction from 42 to 44. They were all built in Duluth, with the exception of one, the Ironwood. That was built at the Coast Guard Yard in Maryland. But all the others were built up here. My first ship was the Mesquite, built in Duluth, and my second one was the Sundew. I was an ensign on this ship, and I was the operations officer and navigator on here, and 14, 15 years later, I kind of came full cycle and came back to it as the captain. So I have a very, special, place in my heart for the Sundew.
This is probably the best experience of my life yet, and I wish I could go to another ship, but unfortunately there's none available, because being on a ship like this, there is just the camaraderie and the friendship between you and your shipmates. It's something that you can't explain, and the things that we do here, it's noticed. It's not something you see on the news like the big stories, but it's noticed, and it just makes life a lot easier for the Lakers and for the pleasure boaters out there. So I'm happy for what I've done so far, and I enjoy this job.